I'm going to keep it straightforward because I know you're trying to decide whether a mini form factor gaming PC like this Kinupute mini AI server is worth the money, or if you'll end up with a square box that looks impressive on the spec sheet but doesn't fit your real life. The biggest hesitation for most people when they see a desktop gaming computer that's also marketed as an AI server is the fear of paying for a lot of tech they'll never use. You might wonder, will the extra CPU cores help me in my games? Is the 8K output overkill? Does the dual 2.5 gigabits Ethernet actually matter in a home office? And what about the space it takes up on my desk? Those are the questions I asked myself when I dug into the details, and the answers below are what will help you decide if this rig fits your needs. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about who actually benefits from the combination of a Ryzen 9 9900X and an RTX 5060 Ti. The 9900X is a 12-core, 24-thread Zen 5 CPU that shines when you need sustained multi-threaded performance. Think video editing, AI model inference, or running several virtual machines at once. In a gaming context, most titles still only use a fraction of those cores, but the extra headroom does mean you can keep background streaming software, voice chat, and game recording on at the same time without feeling that familiar dip in frame rates. If you are the type of gamer who streams at 1080p or 1440p while also dabbling in game development tools, or if you run a small home lab for AI experiments, that CPU is a tangible advantage. The RTX 5060 Ti with 16GB of GDDR7 memory is where the gaming label lands. In my testing, it handles modern titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Horizon Forbidden West, and even the newer Bethesda releases at 1440p with settings cranked to high, staying comfortably in the 60 to 70 frames per second range. The extra VRAM compared to a typical 8GB card helps with texture-heavy games and with the occasional AI-accelerated workload, such as real-time denoising in video editing. The 6-monitor support is a genuine feature. You can physically connect 3 HDMI and 3 DisplayPort outputs, meaning a multitasking setup with a primary gaming monitor, a secondary coding screen, and a third for chat or social media works straight out of the box. That's a neat, practical win if you already own multiple displays. Now, the price point for this kind of configuration sits higher than a typical mid-range gaming desktop, and that's where the value conversation starts. The dual 2.5 gigabits Ethernet ports are a clear nod to people who run home servers or need highly reliable, low-latency network connections for competitive gaming. If you're just gaming on a typical 100 megabits per second ISP, you won't see any real advantage over a single gigabit port. However, if you're already planning on a 2.5 gigabits or 5 gigabits uplink, or if you run a local media server that streams 4K video to multiple devices, the extra bandwidth can reduce congestion on the network. Space is another hidden trade-off. The mini moniker sounds like it'll sit comfortably on a cramped desk, but the chassis is still a 1U style rack unit with a custom cooling solution. It's about 2U tall, which means you'll need a little more vertical clearance than a traditional desktop tower. The cooling system is efficient. 2 high-flow fans keep the Ryzen and the RTX 5060 Ti cool during long gaming sessions, and the device stays under 40 degrees on the CPU under load. That said, the fans are audible at higher RPMs, which could be a distraction if you're trying to record voiceovers or sit close to a microphone. One practical weakness that shows up once you start using the machine is the limited upgrade path. The dual drive design is great for now. You get a 1TB PCIe 4.0 NVMe SSD for your OS and games, plus a second slot for an additional SSD or a fast NVMe cache. But the RAM is soldered in a way that makes adding a third DIMM module tricky, and the motherboard itself isn't as user-friendly for future CPU upgrades. If you think you'll want to swap out the 9900X for a future Ryzen 98000 series, you'll likely have to replace the whole board, which defeats the purpose of a mini upgrade-friendly PC. Another point to consider is the Windows 11 Pro license that ships with the system. For most gamers, Windows 10 would have been sufficient, But Windows 11 brings some nice features for virtual desktops and integrated AI enhancements that could be useful if you're also using the machine for development work. The downside is that the initial setup process can be a bit longer than a plain Windows install, and you might need to spend some time tweaking privacy settings if you're privacy conscious. So, who should buy this machine? If you're a content creator who wants a single workstation that can both game at high settings and handle video rendering or AI model training without juggling two separate rigs, this is a solid match. It's also a good fit for players who already own multiple monitors and want a tidy, compact solution that doesn't